The LEGO Mindstorm's NXT system may look like a toy, but it's really a full-blown robotics development environment. It's used worldwide by schools and universities, by hobbyists, and even a kid or two. It's an amazing system. You can build simple robots like this. You can get a lot more complicated if you want. You're really just limited by the limits of your imagination. The heart of the NXT system is the NXT brick, and it's a full 16-bit microprocessor that you can plug sensors in along the bottom, you can plug motors in along the top. Now let's look at it in some more detail. As I was saying, the motors all plug in along the ABC ports along the top of the NXT brick. So if it's a motor that you're controlling, no matter what kind, it's always going to plug in here. If you're communicating with your NXT with a USB cable, then that'll plug in here where it says USB. You can communicate either with the USB cable or with Bluetooth radio. If you're using Bluetooth radio, then your signal strength and the status of your Bluetooth connection will show up in this icon here. The name of your NXT brick is shown here in the middle. That doesn't so much matter if you're using a USB port, but if you're using the radio, then you would really want to have the name of your robot be individual to you. If you're in the middle of a lab with 20 other robots, you want to make sure you're talking to your robot and not somebody else's. The battery level shows up here. You can use either rechargeable batteries or AA cells. Along the bottom is where you plug in the sensors. So you can have up to 4 sensors at any one time. It's easy to sometimes get confused and plug a sensor into a motor port or motor into a sensor port. It just won't work then. It won't hurt anything. But try to make sure that you're plugging an input device into the bottom and a motor into the top. They're not interchangeable. You navigate through the screen using these cursor control keys in the middle of the brick. And these work a lot like the cursor control keys on your computer. The middle is the enter key. That's also the button that you'd use to turn on the robot. The left and right arrow keys are the ones that you'd use to navigate through the different levels of the menus on the screen. And the small button here is the back button, much like the back button on a internet browser. It moves you up a level or back a level. Talk a little bit more about the sensors that you can plug into this. The light sensor is used to measure light, and it can do that in 2 ways. It can either provide its own light, and that's done with a little red LED here, and so that light would bounce off of the surface and be picked up by the sensor. Or you can turn off the LED and the sensor will just measure the ambient light in the room. There's an ultrasonic sensor, and that measures distance. It can go up to maybe 3 or 4 feet from the robot, so it gives your NXT brick a good idea of what's going on in its world. There's also a sound sensor. It can measure sound levels and such, and so that's something that may not be very useful in a first LEGO League competition because it's so noisy, but it can be a lot of fun to play with. And there's a couple of touch sensors in your kit. These are just simple switches that your NXT brick can use to tell when it's come in contact with something. The orange part of the sensor is the part that moves in and out, and there's a cross area in the front of the sensor that you can plug a Lego axle into, so you can build touch sensors very easily. The motors are really amazing devices in the NXT system. The motor part is here, and then there's a series of gears that gear that motor down to about 150 RPM or so by the time it gets to the axle. But the cool part is that there's a rotation sensor built into this motor. So the NXT brick knows exactly how much this axle has rotated. And that means that it can control the motors so that they go exactly the speed and exactly the distance that you want them to go. One of the great things is that it can control 2 or 3 motors at once. So if you had like one motor on either side of your robot, the NXT will make sure that they're going exactly the same speed, so your robot goes perfectly straight when you tell it to go straight. If you have any older motors from Lego, they will also be able to be used as long as they're 9-volt motors. There's an adapter cable available from Lego just for that purpose. So that's just a quick overview of the hardware side of the NXT. In the next lesson, we'll talk about how you navigate the menus on the NXT brick.